morning, everyone. And once again, welcome to our weekly SonRise Project call, where it's always a safe space for us as we work together and with one another to heal ourselves and our families. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I am so delighted this morning to have with us our very special guest who was here. We were just talking about it. She was here 3 years ago. It's been quite a minute. And she was such an incredible wealth of information and a wonderful spirit and soul. And Dr. Marie Smith East is back with us here this morning. She is a highly esteemed nurse and a board certified psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner and nurse scientist. Her research focuses on geographic access to healthcare utilizing Geographic Information Systems, known as GIS, particularly for individuals with schizophrenia spectrum disorders. In addition to running her own telemedicine practice, she has extensive experience working in community health, mental health settings. She also has experience as a nursing clinical instructor and facilitator, contributing to curriculum and policy development. Dr. Smith East is an alumni of the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, Minority Fellowship Program, and the American Nurses Association. She has presented for the National Institutes of Mental Health on the next big thing in mental health service research and has shared her expertise for what nurses need to know regarding teen vaping on the rise for the American Psychiatric Nurses Association. In her spare time, Dr. Smith East enjoys volunteering with the on-call team of the Schizophrenia and Related Disorders Alliance of America and was the recipient of the 2019 Volunteer of the Year Award in recognition of her years of volunteer work assisting individuals and their families like ours from all over the world. She also serves as the Addictions Council of the American Psychiatric Nurses Association and the Salvation Army Advisory Board in her local community, and she's in Florida. She is currently an assistant professor at the University of North Florida and director of the Psychiatric Mental Health Nurse Practitioner Program, on top of being the CEO of ICANN Telehealth, and she has helped so many of us with her telehealth services. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But most importantly, she is wise, she is beautiful and helpful and wants the best for us and our children. So we are so delighted to have you back, Dr. Smith East. Thank you for being here this morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So glad to be back. Thank you so much for having me here. So our topic today
Yes.
is teens and cannabis use. And
Yes.
man, I remember 3 years ago when I talked about this topic, I
Yes.
said that the marijuana that kids are using now is 100 times more potent than it was back in the day. So
Yes.
when we used to see, like, oh, back in the hippie area, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
time, it was like, oh, it's just a little bit of weed. What is that? It's nothing big. It's natural. That's always the thing. But the statistics are saying, unfortunately, because of that mindset of, oh, it's just weed, it's natural, it's contributing to why there's acceptance of using marijuana to the point where
Mm.
amongst our teens, they are using marijuana more than even tobacco. And amongst the teens, it's usually our 10th graders are the first to try it for the first time. And then those that are using it repeatedly are typically the seniors, our seniors in high school that are using it. Now, a lot of
Do
the
you
studies
see it
that
also in middle school? I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm thinking
um,
about my son
yeah,
started and he said it was seventh grade in the
yeah,
bathroom.
yeah, you're seeing it in middle school, absolutely. As a matter
Hmm.
of fact, a lot of the studies, even back in like 2020, were measuring those kids that were in middle school, and that middle school was like the highest at that time of first time use.
Hmm.
Now, the thing is, when you even look up information or research in regards to use of cannabis, even back then, remember the difference was COVID. So they're
Yeah.
saying, oh, since 2013, that the use of cannabis is less now than it was back in 2013, which is crazy to me, right? But then
Yes.
you have to think of, okay, well, the numbers went down a sharp decline in 2020 because we know that a lot of these teens that are using it is in amongst their peers, right? They're getting
Right.
access for free or sharing,
Right.
because
Right.
they're with their friends, right? And in that particular age, they care about acceptance. They want to fit in and all of
Hmm.
that. So I still feel like there's a lot more research to be done, because they're still reporting the numbers as, oh, it's lower than it's been, but realistically, it's like, okay, well, it's probably going to continue to be more on the rise, as
Yes.
things are kind of unwinding as well. But another interesting statistic that you would be interested in hearing is that they're seeing more of an increase in cannabis use amongst the college educated. So
Hmm.
it's interesting why, even if you understand, okay, well, what are the effects of marijuana? That marijuana is a mild hallucinogen, which means that it can cause you to see things or hear things. And a lot of people don't
Hmm.
realize that that's why it's actually a Scheduled 1 controlled drug. So what that even means is with the FDA, they have different controlled substances. So when we talk about like our Xanaxes, our Clonopins, our Adderalls, marijuana is listed as Schedule 1 amongst Schedule 1 to Schedule 4. It is at the top for addiction.
Mm.
So what that's federally, marijuana is still illegal, but we know we have different states that have allowed for it to be legal or used. Like even here in Florida, it's approved for medical use, right? So that can be very complicated, and again, add to the public perception that, oh, marijuana is not that bad because, oh, there's medical marijuana, or I use it for this, which is always funny to me whenever I have patients that say, well, the marijuana helps calm me down, right? They'll say, oh, it helps calm
Right.
me down, but then they're in my office because they're having anxiety. So
Hmm.
it is a drug. So a lot of times when they're withdrawing from it, the symptoms that everybody around them may see is the irritability, the anger, just not being themselves. You're like, okay, well, if it's helping you to calm down, then why are you so? Yep, it's at the top prediction. This is why parents and friends and loved ones are like, well, you are not yourself because
Hmm.
you clearly are withdrawing from this medication, or it is actually
Hmm.
causing more issues. One of the things that I've had come up quite often now in practice since COVID is the concern of them lacing it with other things. So
Right.
I'm going to talk about some solutions or some recommendations if you are going through this with any family members. And like I said, it's now even extended beyond just teens, right? It's now they're college educated, are also, there's an increase now amongst them.
Can
But
I ask before you can I just
sure.
ask a question? Because you touched on a lot of your patients or people that come to you say it helps
Mhm.
calm me down.
Yes.
And my son was explaining to me a few
Mm-hmm.
years ago
Mm-hmm.
that he said there were three different types, Mom. The three
Mm-hmm.
different types of marijuana. There's a kind I take that helps calm me down, because
Mm-hmm.
mellow me out, and I just want to go to sleep. Then
Mm-hmm.
there's a kind that makes me happy. That's what he said.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a kind that makes me happy and
Mm-hmm.
really,
Mm-hmm.
up. And he said, and then there's a kind that I don't fuck with. That's what he
Mm-hmm.
said.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I shouldn't say that I'm in a church, but I don't mess with, that he said can cause, me to be a little crazy, which
Mm-hmm.
I remember you saying that was
Mm-hmm.
psychosis induced type of marijuana.
It is,
Is
yes.
that true? Are there three different kinds
It's okay. So that
or
again is
more?
about, you see, so it's so funny because all of that is in within one, it's the same thing. So there's
Oh,
different strands that they market it as, like, okay, well, if you take this particular strand of marijuana, then you don't have to worry about these side effects, and if you take this particular strand, it might be stronger in this area than that. Again, that's just marketing. That's marketing, marketing.
okay.
Oh, this is more than this. No, 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 don't be fooled that
Okay.
regardless the definition or just how marijuana is in general, it is all of the above. So in some instances,
Okay.
okay, they
Got
may
it.
feel like, oh, it's calming me down, but it is a mild hallucinogen. So you might be thinking, okay, well, it's not that bad. Like if I take this one, it's not going to make me crazy, or this one. it doesn't even matter regardless of that. It's all the same drug. It really, really is. And it's more of just a matter of marketing. I think if anything, it's more of trying to, I don't want to say make it more acceptable to use, right? Like,
Yes.
oh, okay, well, see, I'm only using this type, right? And even like I said, in later days with a lot of my patients, they're saying, well, I try not to smoke marijuana as much because I'm seeing there's an increase in lacing with fentanyl. So a lot of our teens that are using it are well aware that, hey, I think I might be careful about using this because there's a chance, a 50-50 chance that it might be laced with something more. And then it also becomes the trust of the person that they're getting the drug from, right? Where I've had other teens get very upset because, like, say if they were interviewing for a job and they're like, I couldn't get into, I thought it was just marijuana. They went and went for a job interview, and the job interview, they tested positive for methamphetamines, and they're like, I'm not doing methamphetamines, so I don't know why I would test positive for that. I'm only doing marijuana. So that's the thing about it. It's like, well, it's almost like when you think about, okay, well, to what extent is it's just trying to make it more acceptable. Does that make sense? Like, okay, well, if I do this,
Totally.
it's more acceptable if I do this. And I feel like deep down inside they kind of know, like, yeah, I probably shouldn't be, but um back to the statistics though, when we
Yes.
talk about um just what's being seen in the literature, the reasons why teens are using, they're reporting that it's for enjoyment. They're saying that they enjoy doing it. And then the other is for coping skills. I just want to escape from my problems. And so when we talk about solutions on how to target that, it's more so just thinking of, well, for teens, what can we get them into doing that is going to give them enjoyment without having to do a drug, right? Or that's simple, right? If they are having poor coping skills, how can we help them with coping better than having to turn to a drug? So that takes me to my next big point is, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 top things that I have come across that I would like to share with each of you. And the first biggest thing is a mood disorder. So what does that mean? The person could have depression, they could have bipolar disorder. It's very difficult to tell. I always say, which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Why might someone be using a particular substance? So, for example, I have had quite a few patients that were diagnosed with bipolar disorder or diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, and they went untreated for so long. Even patients that have depression went untreated for so long. And so they may be using because they feel depressed, or they may feel, even within our teens, like, I don't fit in. And so to fit in is, I'm going to try this. And they try it. And then now they've, created an addiction from it, right? Because marijuana is so addictive and it's so much more potent now than it was back in the day. So I remember saying this even 3 years ago, is that it's very hard to separate in your mind. Like, when you're the outsider looking in, there's a component of, well, why can't you just stop? You know?
That's right.
And it's like, okay, it has all these negative consequences, and it's not, those negative consequences in many ways are outweighing the positives of it. So just stop. But I always say to take it back to, there's 2 components, the mind part of it, and then there's the physical component of it. And with any type of addiction, even tobacco, believe it or not, and alcohol, their bodies physically crave it. That's an addiction. You're craving it.
Right.
And even if you're telling yourself, I'm not going to take this anymore, their body is like, oh, you can take this and get that quick hit of enjoyment and
Mhm.
relaxation, and you'll feel better.
Right.
um,
While
so
fixing the withdrawal symptoms.
yes. And so,
Mhm.
and a lot of times when we discover, because a lot of parents don't even know that their kids are doing marijuana per se, because they might think that they're just vaping, because that's another thing, right? Where kids can vape now, and they're so creative in their vaping and the types of vaping, the ones that look like little USBs. And a
Yes.
lot of times they're thinking, well, if I vape, it's safer than smoking cigarettes. or if I vape, it just has a little bit of marijuana in it. It's not that bad. And the reality of it is it's so highly addictive. Even vaping is bad, you know? And then it's a mixed topic, right? So even for like tobacco, there's the debate of what's harm reduction, right? Well, I went from smoking like 5 packs of cigarettes a day, and at least with the vaping, I'm only doing like one cartridge every so many days or one cartridge a week.
Right.
And again, it's a debated topic in medicine right now. I'm of the belief that yes, you can do one or the other, but I think there's better ways to get over wanting to stop tobacco or wanting to stop marijuana. But I applaud people that are at least aware that, hey, I'm trying to quit this, so I'm going to try this a little bit. And
Mhm.
so that's why I always bring it back to it's very important to find a provider that is willing to work with you so that you can figure out, well, if I am trying to quit cigarettes or if I'm trying to quit marijuana, how can I do that based off of what I'm doing? Don't try to approach like a one all catch all be all, because every single person is different. Every single person has their own traumas.
Mhm.
Every single person has maybe a mood disorder. Every single person has a different family dynamic. So you cannot throw a one like a catch all approach
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
everybody, because it just does not work that way.
Right.
So back to my top five. So the first thing would be, does this person have a mood disorder? And if they do have a mood disorder, a lot of times it can help a little bit with trying to better decide on how they can better cope. Because if they are depressed, even if you're talking to them like, you need to quit this, you need to quit this, they can't. They can't. They're so depressed. It's hard for them. Neurologically, their neurotransmitters are not firing like how they should. They lower levels, all of that. They need a little bit more assistance. And a lot of times that might be medication that they might need to take to help them out of that funk. And then and I always say it's not a cure, it's just to take the edge off. And then there's the complication of getting them to take it every single day. And then also finding the right medication, because it can get very frustrating when you're like, okay, well, my child has tried this, my child has tried that, and it's not working. But honestly, from my experience, if you find a provider that's willing to go the mile with you and willing to really see you and see you for who the situation is, you'll eventually find it. You will eventually
Mhm.
find it. And I remember saying this even 3 years ago, and it still holds true
Mhm.
today. You are at the right place at the right time, speaking to the right people. It's not by chance. It's my belief. Nothing happens
Absolutely.
just by chance. You and I sitting
Absolutely.
here having this conversation, all the members that are on the call right now, it's not by chance that the stars have aligned for us to be here talking to each other today. And
100%
so,
agree.
like I said, it's very difficult when there's a mood disorder. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Are they using because they're depressed, or are they because they're depressed they are using? Like, you don't really know. Like, oh, or if they are displaying symptoms of anger, irritability, is that withdrawal because they are using? You really don't
Right.
know. So that's one of the things.
But
And
isn't there, can I just ask about that? Because so
sure.
many of us as parents, and I see this so clearly now,
Mm-hmm.
5 years later, 6 years later, after being at the height of a lot of trauma,
Mm-hmm.
um, with my son, much of which I think was caused by the parents in the household, quite frankly. But
Mm-hmm.
my question about number one, is it depression or possibly another
Mm-hmm.
mental illness? Is it massive pressure for
Mm-hmm.
our children that we put on them? And
Mm-hmm.
then they're like, enough, it's too much.
Yeah.
I'm watching a show forever
Mm-hmm.
that reminds me of my household where we had planned out the kids' lives for them. And we told them,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to do this and you're going to do this and you're going to do
Mm-hmm.
this. No, you can't sleep in. And no, you can't do
Mm-hmm.
this. And you have to go to school and you have to do this. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that pressure was like
Mm-hmm.
a pressure cooker. And so
Mm-hmm.
I believe that my son was looking for an outlet
Mm-hmm.
just to relax and to have a space that felt like I can just be, I can
Yeah.
just be. And so, and there probably was all those other things, were all
Mm-hmm.
those other things. But do you
Mm-hmm.
find with people that you work with that
Mm-hmm.
often it's the parents and too much pressure on the young person that
Yeah. What ends up
causes
happening?
them?
Yep. What ends up happening is rebellion. That's
Yeah,
what they can
that too.
control. And
Mhm.
again, so even like eating disorders, people who
Yes.
anorexia and bulimia and stuff like that, it's a sense of control. So and it's rebellion. I know that you don't want me to use this drug, so I'm going to use it. And I have control over using that. I have no control over everything else, but I have control over that. And so
And you
absolutely,
can't stop me. You can't stop
exactly,
me. So
exactly.
this is how I can now control. You've been
Yes,
controlling me my whole life. Now
yes,
I can control this situation.
yes.
That's really deep.
Yeah. And then what ends up happening is, or at least one of my lists on here with the 5 things is that it's helping them to understand that it's self-destructive. You
Yes,
think that you're getting back at your parents. You think that, hey, I am in control, but are you really in control? Because a lot of times the kids will say, I feel out of control when I'm using it. I feel out of control. And if I don't take it, I don't feel good. I have to take it. I have to be able to relax. Again, that's withdrawal, that's addiction.
right.
So
I
that's
do.
another aspect to definitely tackle, is that I absolutely see that, is that kids are like feeling like, well, it makes me feel a sense of control. And that's the thing, that bargaining, because you're the parent. Yes, of course, you're guiding them, and it's all within love, right? No parent is
That's
trying to
right.
push their child one where, it's just more, we know based off of our experiences, we're trying to parent our kids better than how we were parented, right?
Yes,
And so it's all a combination, and why I say a one size fits all approach does not work.
that's right.
Because everybody is going to be different, and you tackle it one at a time. Like, hey, what are we going to tackle here? And
Okay.
building that trust as a provider, building that trust, because you are like the third party, you're the outsider looking in. And you can be like the mediator between it all, like trying to figure out, okay,
Mm-hmm.
helping the parents understand what's going on and the child to understand what's going on. And it's not that
Mm-hmm.
anybody is bad, like, right? Like, we always try to, label it as, oh, this all good or all bad. We're all
Mm-hmm.
just human beings trying to figure it out. We're all in this life trying to figure it out. That's the first thing. So the mood disorder. The second thing is the power of prayer, believe it or not, the power
Mm-hmm.
of prayer. And in my practice, I believe in a higher power. I do ask the families if they believe in a higher power. And, I do get sometimes where they're like, no, or I do believe, but, the way that things are going, where is God in this situation? And I understand it. But I have also realized, and research has supported it, that when there is a belief in a higher power, it is very, very helpful. It serves as a mediator in this process of overcoming these poor coping skills or any type of addiction. And that's really why you see that even with like AA meetings, they embrace that spirituality or that higher power, because research does support that when that's there, it makes them not feel as hopeless, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know with substance use, they can get to a point of hopelessness. And then we're talking about suicide and wanting to end their
Yes.
life and all of that. So the power of prayer, and again, it's not, if you're not one of those that believe in the power of prayer, no judgment or anything like that. I'm just sharing with you what I have seen has been helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And then another very, very interesting topic is tough love versus enabling versus just having compassion. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll share an example with you where a parent, and you even research this as well. Does tough love work? Right? Where, you know what, you're not going to be using it in my house. You got to get out, right? And I have a family that the parent ended up kicking their kid out, and now the kid is doing amazing, by the way. But for the parent, it was very, very difficult because the child was like knocking on their door, like, let me in. But the parent knew that, this is not my child. I cannot let them in. This is wreaking havoc on the rest of our household. They had little ones. And it broke that parent's heart to do that. But again, they were exercising tough love. And now the child, kind of was on the street, ended up having a child and is now a parent themselves. And that motivated them to get into rehab, and they are doing quite well now. But those are stories, are not, everybody is different. One size does not fit all. But for that particular family, tough love worked for them. Um, the other comparison is enabling, right? So you could say, well, I don't want my child to be out on the streets, right? What parent would want their kid to be out on the street, right?
Exactly. Uh-huh.
And but then there's an instance of, okay, well, the child, the parent didn't kick them out or anything like that, but they didn't know that the child was selling drugs also. And sadly enough, the parent, the dad ended up getting killed by the drug dealer.
Oh God.
Yeah, and then the child even then didn't even
Mm.
was still using, and it wasn't
Oh,
until they
wow.
got caught with something that they ended up in jail or in prison or whatever, and that's when they finally turned their life around.
Wow.
Sometimes that's an awful, way of looking at it, right? But these are just stories of, again, where one size doesn't fit all, and it's a very balancing act. And honestly, the research says they kind of steer away from tough love. They steer away from enabling. There's more so supporting, mean what you say, setting boundaries, and but being supportive in the same sense. So what they suggest is, okay, if you have one that's using, okay, that's your choice to use, but you're not going to be using in my house. Or if you're
Right.
going to use, I'm not going to be paying for your cell phone bill, because obviously if you have money to purchase that, then you should be paying for your own thing. So the research supports a little bit of a balance of setting boundaries but still having compassion and understanding. And that's not something that um it comes natural for everyone, right? So again,
Right. It
it's
doesn't.
it's getting support in that area for parents that are trying to figure out, how do I handle that? And then
Mm-hmm.
my fourth one, because I remember I said it's out of five, is
Mm-hmm.
motivational interviewing. And I mentioned this the last time that I was here, and I mentioned this too. I think we had a session on vaping, perhaps, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of research to support the use of motivational interviewing. And what that means is looking into, what are your child's goals? What is it that they want? So a lot of times they might be, hey, my son is really into football and he really wants to go pro and that's what he loves. You can say, well, if you want to do football, you can't be testing positive for substances. It's gonna, slow you down in this particular regard. You're not gonna be at your optimum health. So let me help you, or let me get you the resources to help. I know this is very watered down of motivational interviewing, but that's essentially what it is identifying what the person's goals are and going from there to help them reach those goals. But those goals, as a parent, you cannot identify for them. It's for the child to identify, and they might struggle with identifying where they are in this world, right? They might struggle with trying to figure out it in 10th grade or in 7th grade what they're going to do with their lives. But at the same time, you can find, okay, what are the activities that they do enjoy doing? And again, setting boundaries and how can we accomplish those goals and go from
Right.
there. And then last but not least, which I think is one of the most important, is the attitude of the person. So it's
Mm-hmm.
very difficult to love on someone that doesn't want help, or love on someone that blames you or is angry with you or is frustrated with
Right.
you. It's very difficult to love on them and provide
That's
support.
right.
And I know that very much because, again, it's the combination of, do they have a mood disorder that's already making them irritable, angry, depressed? Or is it withdrawal too, because they didn't, you're telling them they can't do this, this, and this, and they're already going to be angry, irritable. Those symptoms
Right.
all go together. So it's very
Exactly.
difficult to say, as a parent, I need to keep hanging in there to help my
Yes.
child. And that's where I say, even if you don't believe in a higher power, but the power of prayer to help
That's
you
right.
navigate through that and just taking it one day at a time. But extending grace is a big, big thing. And it's
Mm-hmm.
very difficult, underline, difficult to
Yes.
extend grace when you're dealing with a child that their brain doesn't fully develop until 21 years of age. That frontal lobe, that lobe of the brain that determines impulsivity, where they're very impulsive, decision making, that doesn't fully develop until they're 21 years of age.
Mm.
So up until that point, it's very difficult to try to rationalize with them and try to figure out, okay, well, that's not the good decision, and that's not what I would do.
Right.
Um, so extending grace, and then extending grace for yourself, right?
Yes.
Extending grace for yourself to know that you don't have all the answers, right? And we're just trying to figure it out. and go from there.
Mm,
And then one last thing that I always get asked to, and I know this is a little off topic, is CBD products. So
yes.
I've been asked about that. Well, what are your thoughts about CBD? Now, CBD, believe it or not, is approved for like epilepsy, seizures, and so forth. So there's benefits to that for CBD. But again, you just have to be very careful where you're purchasing your CBD, because some CBDs can have traces of marijuana or the THC in it. So, because CBD products, there's so many different types. There's edibles that you can try. You know,
Right.
there's the ones that you can rub on. So just being knowledgeable about even the CBD product that you're using to make sure there's no traces of THC that can be in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, marijuana is a mild hallucinogen. So,
Yes. Can you talk about that? You just mentioned CBD versus THC.
mhm,
And then I remember when you were here before, we were talking about this is not your mama's marijuana. This is
it's
very
not,
different. So
yes.
can you talk about why it's so dangerous now because of the THC levels versus
Mhm,
back then?
mhm,
Can you share that information, number one? And number
absolutely.
two, can you talk about cannabis consumption?
Mhm,
Sometimes it's gummies or
mhm,
brownies or, old fashioned, roll it up or whatever, or
mhm,
vaping, even the
mhm,
pens. Can you
mhm,
talk about what's most prevalent and is one method
mhm.
worse than another?
Yes. Okay. So let's start with the first question. Why it's so much stronger, and well, it is. That's just it's a lot more stronger. The way
Hmm.
in which they used to derive the cannabis is different than it used to be. And so even just the way in which they are deriving the cannabis is different. So the methodology to that is different, and it's causing it to be a lot stronger. And why it becomes dangerous is again because when it's stronger, it's more likely to be more addictive, right? Just like if it were you see in tobacco, if tobacco's more addictive than before, oh, because it's stronger, it's more difficult to beat. Um, and also with marijuana, the mention of they're seeing cannabis induced emesis, which is where people when they're smoking or using marijuana, they become so violently, like they get so nauseous and they're throwing up all the time.
Oh,
And I remember when this first came out, I was seeing it already in practice before they even started doing it in research. Because I would have patients that were saying, "Oh, I feel like this particular antidepressant is making me feel nauseous all the time, and da 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 da, and I'm throwing up." And I was like, "Okay, I could where I could see that." But then, I mean, they were smoking 24/7. And when they pulled back on using as much, they felt that they weren't throwing up as much. Or so there
wow.
that is actually a thing, cannabis induced emesis. So back in the
Emesis.
day we weren't seeing that. And again, that's related to how potent marijuana has become.
Right.
And then in terms of being dangerous, like I mentioned, it's a mild hallucinogen, so it can cause people to see things, hear things, be paranoid than they probably ever were back in the day.
And
So
that's the
that's where
cannabis-induced psychosis
cannabis
you talked
induced
about
psychosis.
before?
Yes,
Mhm.
correct. And then
How
the
prevalent is that, Dr. Marie? How prevalent is that?
it's pretty more, I would say it's more prevalent than it was before, and it is related to how much the person is smoking too. So you're seeing it a lot more often than you were seeing it before. But it is more prevalent than it was in the past, and I would attribute that again to just the potency of the
Yeah.
cannabis.
Yeah.
Because remember, it's just like if you know that a substance can cause you to see things or hear things, and you're using quite a bit of it, I could see where that would make more sense, that it would make you paranoid, and
Right.
more likely to feel that way. And then the other
Got it.
question that you mentioned was the consumption of cannabis. So the newest thing is the vaping, right? That's the newest one
Yeah.
added to it. But mostly they're smoking it by rolling it, bongs,
Uh-huh.
you know, doing it in that particular manner. But the newest one to the bunch is the vaping. And
Yeah.
a lot of it's more a newer trend is the vaping because they feel that it's more conspicuous. The smell
Right.
of it isn't as potent as if you were to be rolling it, right? Because
That's
everybody,
right. It's not
you know that
right.
smell of it. So then if they're vaping, then it could, be masked with those sweet flavors,
Yeah.
and potentially get away with a lot more than before.
Right. Absolutely. And then the bathroom fan comes
The
on, the
bathroom
vent
fan
comes
comes
on
on. Mhm.
forever, and then they blow it in the vent.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm learning all of these things. But
Yes.
there was a question in the chat. I want to make sure
Sure.
we get to that. And I also want to make sure we open up the line for people who might have questions as
Sure.
well. Someone says, is there sufficient evidence that GLP-1s help with curbing addictions?
Oh, that's such a great question. Such a great question.
I'm not
So,
even sure what a GLP-1
so
is.
they're talking about like the medication, so like Ozempic,
Yes,
metformin.
yes.
So, what I have seen, believe it or not, I mean, that is more of an emerging type of research. And believe it or not, they use that more for like antipsychotic induced weight gain. So if
Okay.
you have, I'm just throwing that out there. If you have a child that might be on like say Abilify, there's so much research to support that it can help with weight gain associated with it. But yes, that is like more of an emerging type of thing that time will tell. But I have had better success in terms of cravings and all of that with other medications that are not the GLP-1. So, for example, like an naltrexone type of a thing, that they
Mhm.
use for addictions for alcohol that can help with cravings related to substances and
Yes,
impulsivity. And then again, it takes it back to, well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Is there a mood disorder that has not been completely taken care of in terms of those symptoms, like the racing thoughts and all of that? Um,
mhm,
can we target that first and then go from there? Because a lot of
right,
times, if you're thinking about, I got to get to using, I got to get to using, there's other medications that can help support that. But that is a very good question. That's an emerging part of research. And that's such a hot
right.
topic right now, too,
Yes,
especially because there's so many people are even using Ozempic for like weight gain and stuff like
absolutely.
that.
I've used Ozempic and had great success, and I'm not, and it's my doctor said
Mhm.
everything is better than it's ever been,
Yeah.
health-wise.
And the
But
and the
there's
tricky yeah, and the tricky thing about that is trying to get approval for your insurance company. So,
That's right,
you would have to like trying to get it approved for, okay, well, this I'm using this to help them curb the cravings for
craving,
substances. It's going to
right,
be a little bit more difficult to get approval.
right.
But if you have a good provider that's
Possible.
willing to go the
hmm
mile,
That's
that's willing
right.
to go the mile.
That's
Good
right.
question.
Awesome. That's a great question. There's another question. How do you approach your child with this? If they're
Mhm,
totally in denial about the problem, what
mhm.
tips would you have to address the need to get them help? It's a great
I agree.
question.
That's a very good one. So the biggest thing is to try to figure out or even create a list of what are the negative consequences of it. So a negative consequence is and then it's hard depending on the age. Is there an age for this child by any
I
chance?
would imagine it's probably a teen, 22,
Yeah,
22,
he's
young
22. The
adult.
child is
22.
22.
Yeah, so that's good. The fact that they're 22, now you can kind of change it to, okay, you're a young adult. And is this person being able to work a job and work full time or go to school? Like, what are their goals? Like bringing it back to that and what the negative consequences are. Are they paying their own cell phone bill? Are they paying their own rent? Or what? I don't know. You see what I mean? Like, it's like a one
Yeah,
child fits all approach. A one size fit all approach doesn't really necessarily work, but what I have seen happen, especially if it's a 22-year-old, is highlighting what are the negative consequences. As your family member that loves you, I am seeing that you are just smoking all day long. Like, is this what you want your life to be like? What do you see for yourself? Like, when I'm dead and gone, how are you going to maintain this, lifestyle? What do you see for yourself? So again, it kind of takes it back to the motivational interviewing concept of it is highlighting what are the negative consequences. And honestly, as a parent, allowing those negative consequences to happen. Of course, we don't want them to be in jail, but oh, if you have money to pay for drugs, well, then maybe you can pay for your cell phone or maybe you can pay for your rent. um, so putting it back on how is it affecting their day-to-day life? And I'm
Mm,
not sure, for each person, it's different, what their day-to-day life is affected by. But I would highlight that and start there. And
mm,
yeah. And then also I wanted to point out too is that if they don't see it as a problem and they're in total denial, um, they may be using it as a means to help them cope with something. So
yeah,
what I have seen help is if they're having any trouble sleeping, like they're saying, well, I use it to sleep. I use it to relax. And oh, medications ain't no better than me using this. Well, if you get caught with this, you can potentially go to jail. Versus a medication, it could really help you in so many different ways. So what I have used, if they're not even open to medications, is, hey, let's start with something that'll just help you get a good night's rest, or help you be in a better mood where you're not so up and down, like irritable, and 1 minute you're okay, 1 minute you're not okay. It'll just help take the edge off. That's what you're seeking from using the cannabis. We can find better alternatives to doing that. And then, like I said, you can consider harm reduction, right? Where, okay, well, rather than rolling it and all this stuff, maybe move towards like a vaping thing and then move towards getting off of it. So there's so many different approaches, but helping them to see it is by highlighting the negative consequences. And
Thank you.
that's mhm,
Can I
that's
comment as well? Hi, Kelly. This is Jeanette.
hey, Jeanette.
And one of the concerns that we are battling right now, we're concerned our son is definitely in a deep cannabis-induced psychotic state, and he's
mhm,
blaming us. And
mhm,
so he has done things like rejected his monthly allowance, closed his account, got a new phone number. He reached out yesterday with the new phone number. He has
mhm,
been, we've lost contact with him. We went to where he's in school to check
mhm,
on his wellness. He refused to see us. We'd involved the dean, et cetera. And as
mhm,
because he's of age, he's an adult, we had no rights. And
mhm.
so at this point, I mean, I believe, your suggestion that we discuss the negative consequences, but he is so
You can't
deep in
can't
the
even process.
state.
Yeah,
He's blaming us
yeah.
for, he's talking about things that happened in sixth grade that we don't even know what he's talking about. So our concern, we are prepared to help and intervene, but how can we do that legally? Because my concern is how, if we, I don't know how he's even getting funds to pay for this weed.
Mhm,
Like, what is he doing? And
mhm.
so, we certainly don't, want him to get involved with the law. But
Exactly.
I mean, and he's refusing therapy, refusing everything. So it's,
I don't know what
I see
state
someone else. Yeah,
I don't know what state you live in, but here in Florida, we have
Maryland.
what's called
Mhm.
a Marchman Act, and I'm not sure of what the laws are in Maryland, but in Florida, we have what is called a Marchman Act, where it's similar to what you could do, what we call a Baker Act, which is involuntary hospitalization for psychosis and stuff. But there's a Marchman Act that you can do an involuntary or initiate an involuntary hospitalization for substance use. And so what you do is we call it an ex parte, where you write to the court and say, hey, and even a friend can ex parte someone. So, hey, even a neighbor, hey, these are the symptoms that I'm seeing. I'm concerned about their well being. I just want to ask the court to have my child or whoever taken into a facility to be assessed. And the facility can decide whether or not to keep them, not keep them. But a lot of times that's what families will do here. If they're refusing all treatment and you're very concerned, they can also do an ex parte on the premise of substance use, because you probably
Okay.
wouldn't meet the criteria for involuntary hospitalization because you have to be a danger to yourself, others, or if without treatment they would get worse. Those are the three things. So
Got it. All right.
you
We'll
can look
research
into
that
that
for
for Maryland. I'm not
Massachusetts.
sure if they
Okay.
have that.
Or he's
And then if
actually going
there's
to
a
be, he's
trusted
about to head to Massachusetts. So we'll look that
Oh,
up for
Massachusetts. Yep,
Massachusetts. Yeah.
Massachusetts might very much have that an
Hmm.
involuntary hospitalization for substance use.
Got it.
And
Thank you.
Arizona, believe it or not, has really good laws for that. It's almost shocking because they can even court order them to treatment for at least a year. So it's really, and meaning that if they don't go treatment, they're not criminals or anything like that. If they don't get treatment, they can take them to jail if they don't go. So, and
Right.
that usually does it. That usually does it. They're like, nope, I'll take whatever you want me to take for the medication. Um, and also, I don't know if there's a trusted friend or family member, or some type of peer that you could reach out to that even just to get them started on something like a medication, because therapy, and that if they're already experiencing cannabis induced psychosis, therapy isn't going to work. You can't talk to them about it, but they might be willing to try something, even like a little bit of something at bedtime to help them get a good night's rest might be enough to get their brain focusing, their brain enough or open enough to even get better treatment. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Because I'm
Yeah.
already thinking of a medication that could have probably been used for your son, that he could probably use at bedtime that help him get a good night's rest and be in a more stable mood.
Can I just say something I want to share because I think this is my one of my sons is similar to, and I know Jeanette well, we're friends, and I got some great coaching recently. And she said, Kyle, and share openly because he's fine with me sharing openly. But she
Mm-hmm.
said, you know, Kyle is in trouble and he's got zero skills for working through the trouble because you've taught him learned helplessness. You've given him everything, you've provided everything. He doesn't know how to work through trouble. He doesn't know how to work through trauma because that's not what you've taught him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and you've saved him completely, you know, his whole life. So she said he doesn't think his life is fine. He hasn't achieved his goals. He hasn't been able to do what he wanted to do. He probably feels impotent and he's unwilling to talk about it. And so she said, what if you said to him, I know there is so much more inside of you, more life, more potential, more joy. And I'm afraid. I'm afraid that you have become trapped inside of yourself and you're unwilling to ask for help. And I want to tell you that I love you. I apologize for anything that I may have done and your dad may have done to harm you. And we're here when you're ready because ultimately he has to choose for himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly believe we sent him away 3 times. If I
Mm-hmm.
could get the time back, I would never have done that. And I'm only sharing that because you talked about the involuntary. I
Mm-hmm.
would never have done that because I think we caused him so much pain and trauma
Mm-hmm.
being pulled out of his house, you know, and taken somewhere against his will.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it has damaged our relationship. And at the end of the day, what we want more than anything is to have a relationship with our loved ones. So they
Mm-hmm.
do feel safe coming to us. And so, very similar to the story that you just shared, Jeanette, I've been there
Mm-hmm.
countless
yes,
times
I know.
and probably still there to a large degree. However, I've chosen to one, completely give it over to God, and two,
Amen.
to say, you know, it's not my fault, it's not my fight, and it's not my fix. And
Mm-hmm.
for his
That's
whole
right.
life, I've been trying to fix it
Mm-hmm.
and been trying to fix all the problems. So he doesn't have the muscle to
Mm-hmm.
fix his own problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't do it for him. All
Mm-hmm.
I can do is
That's right.
I text him and say, I love you. That's it. Nothing else.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's it.
And I think that I would just suggest, and again, I'm not a therapist. I have
Mm-hmm.
no idea what's right. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, Dr. Marie, I think every case is different. Absolutely.
Yes, every case is different. And honestly, Kelli, don't beat yourself up because you're like, oh, I would have never sent them away. Because realistically, we really don't know the depth of how bad things are.
That's right. You're right. And I'm not
Possible.
beating myself up, and I've gotten through the guilt and all those things. I'm just sharing. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes we say, if we can get the time back, we can't get the time back. But if I
Yeah.
could get the time back, I
Mm-hmm.
probably would have had a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I noticed some things changing. What's going on? Let's have a conversation
Mm-hmm.
and not the punishment, not the, you know, take the phone away and do, you know, all the things out of fear and trying to hold on to him. So
Mm-hmm.
that's all I was just commenting that I think every case is different. And
Yes.
yet the person, especially when they're an adult, they
Mm-hmm.
have to choose. And I know there's a lot of other questions and I want to
Sorry.
make sure no, don't be sorry. And
Thank you.
if you
Thank
can
you.
stay a little bit extra time, that would be great because I
Mm-hmm.
think if you can, Dr. Marie, I know we're supposed
Yeah.
to end in 6 minutes, but if we
Yeah.
can go over a little bit, I think that would be wonderful because there are some other questions. But I just
Yeah.
needed to get that off my chest.
Yeah. And why I say that too is because so in some instances, because everybody is different, you'll
Hmm.
some parents say that saved my kid's life. Like,
That's right.
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Some kids, you don't know what is going on.
That's right.
So
And the rebellion's too much, the
rebellion
disrespect
is
is
too
too
much.
much, it could be fear in
Yeah.
fear for your own safety. So
Yeah.
I get all of that, and every case
Mhm.
is different. I know
Mhm.
there's a hand up, but there's somebody that put something in the in the chat a while ago. So let me just share this. It says and then we'll go to you, who had the hand up. I don't see anymore, but we'll get there. It says my son is currently in psychosis from cannabis use for the third time. He's almost 17. We're
Mhm.
seeing a psychiatrist and have put him in an psychotic, and we are about to start a PHP program. Any suggestions on how to support as he's very angry and leaving the house? Boy, I've been there too.
Mhm.
I'm considering boarding school after he's out of psychosis to get him out of the environment as he's getting it at school. He says
Mhm.
he's using to help with his anxiety. We've started meds to help that as well. Any
Yeah.
thoughts on the help with with all of it?
Yeah, and that's tough, right? I do agree with getting the child out of the environment, right? But it's also like showing them a better way. I'm not sure what the boarding school entails, but it's such a fine line, right? Because nobody wants to feel like, oh, my parents were, you're doing it out of love, right? You're doing it out of love, like whether they're
Sure.
being hospitalized for, psychosis or whatever, or getting them in voluntary hospital, it's out of love. But it's such a fine line, right? Because you don't want them to feel rejected either, right? So, but if you find the right, I don't want to say boarding school, but just if you find the right environment to put them in, because I don't know, I'm not well versed in boarding schools, but if you find the right treatment center for them that is expressing love, is expressing that, it could have possibly worked because a lot of times it's just getting them out of that environment. I've even seen parents will try to like homeschool their kids as an alternative because they're like they just need to be out of this. But I mean at 17 that's very difficult to go down that road. But um I guess what the question was, or was it just more so just venting? I'm trying to think what the
Hi there.
question.
Yeah, hi there. I'm
Yeah,
Nicole, and thank you for some of
sure.
your insight there.
Hmm.
No, it was just, of course, this has been a a journey, trying to figure out the help to get him because he's been in an intensive outpatient program before.
Hmm.
And he was in psychosis, getting help, getting better, smoked again, has
Hmm.
regressed. And you talk about control, you can't control everything, right?
No.
And he's getting it at school. When you
Hmm.
talk about motivation, trying to find him, the right environment.
Hmm.
I'm at the point now where I'm realizing being here is probably not it.
Hmm.
Because but I know he first has to get well,
Hmm.
mentally, and emotionally,
Hmm.
and perhaps a military school environment has sports, the sport that he wants to play.
Hmm.
That in an environment where controlled, where he can't get access, to substances can
Hmm.
help. But of course, after right now he's not in a state of any, he can't do
Hmm.
any of that. But I'm
Hmm.
just trying to figure out a path because, we, yeah, we're kind of at a standstill trying to get him help now.
Hmm. So, you said, is it football that he's really into?
Basketball.
Oh, basketball. Okay.
Yes.
Did you see if there's any other like basketball programs that might be available, like in other?
Yes. We're looking at some programs. The thing is, he hasn't right now he can't participate with the schools, program that he was in. He's been
Hmm.
doing a little AAU practice, but he's not we got to get him a little bit better,
Hmm.
but I've been letting him go to some practice just to
Hmm.
give him an outlet.
Hmm. Hmm. And does he have any closer friends, or are all the friends also using like marijuana and all of that?
It's just amazing right now. I've Most of the friends are drinking these days,
Hmm.
and some of them are using marijuana.
Hmm.
Um, he does have a few, good friends that I've tried, to talk and try to help along the way.
Hmm.
But he still finds a way. As one friend just texted me yesterday, he said, we've been doing all we can to encourage him not to smoke, but he finds kids at school that
Hmm.
can give him marijuana.
Hmm. Wow. Well, then that's something
Yes.
still seeking it out. It's not like
Yeah, he's seeking it out. Yes.
seeking it out. So again, I think that, I'll say a prayer also if you believe in a higher power.
Yes. Oh, I absolutely believe in a higher power. He's talked to the pastor.
Yeah,
We pray, yes.
and trying to figure that out. But It does sound like the moods. How good is the psychiatrist? Or is the psychiatrist willing to go the extra mile for you guys, or it's just like a generic?
He has been willing to go the extra mile. He talks to me almost daily.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he's been really, good. He's fairly new. We've been working with him for several months now, and
Mhm.
before even he had gone back into psychosis. He's been quite helpful.
And just a side note, and I know this is just a side note, did they ever considered any injections?
Well, that's what I'm going to talk to him about again.
Mhm,
I literally just asked about that last week,
mhm,
because I talked to another friend,
mhm,
who happens to be a psychiatrist, and he mentioned that,
mhm.
and that's something now that I want to talk about tomorrow because this weekend I've had challenges getting him to take the medication.
Yes, because well, that's what I was gonna say. Because if it's like the third time or so of having psychosis again, it gets harder and harder to treat every time they keep going back into psychosis. So I would strongly recommend an injection, and I've had really good success with Aristata, believe it or not.
Aristada, okay,
Aristata, very very good, and especially in. So I've had patients that have come to me that they're young, and they were using marijuana and all of that, and it's shocking almost when they can get on a really good medication and really like the injection, they're getting it, the medication and stuff, that they're realizing like this. One of my patients, they were, they really want to be an accountant and all, like it's amazing. And they realized, they're like, oh, I thought I could smoke just a little bit, and then I realized after, now they're on the medication, they're getting the injection, they're like, I thought I could just smoke just a little bit, and I realized I can't smoke a little bit because I was going back.
right,
So that's cool that they were even able to realize that. So again, I'm not supported by any pharmaceutical company. This is just my own experiences. There's so many different injections. There's like the Invega, there's Abilify Maintaina, and all of that. But I had the best success on Aristata. And you can also get them to even take the injection. You could tell them like, hey, it's like a once a month thing. So you don't have to,
yes,
I don't have to keep harassing you about take this, take this, take that, and all of that. You just go and you're good. And nowadays they even have one that you could take an injection. I think in Vanca Trinza, it's like once every 3 months. And then they have
wow,
one that's like once every 6 months. So
hmm
so that would be my suggestion for your particular situation for sure.
I appreciate it because the first time he wasn't on anything. And
Mm-hmm.
then, April 21st, we went into psychosis. So he started Risperidone. He
Mm-hmm.
was doing better and improving. And
Mm-hmm.
then he smoked again. And so
Mm-hmm.
now we're back in yeah. So I
Yeah.
will absolutely, thank you. This is the second time I've heard that now with under a week about looking at injectables. So thank you
Yeah.
I would check it
Mhm.
out. Thank you.
No problem.
And Dr. Marie does telehealth. And so she could be an additional resource, Nicole, and you all
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
connect.
Yeah. Feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah, we'll
Kelly.
put her
Thank you.
contact information in the chat. And I just want to
Yeah.
make sure, I know we're over time, so people can stay. Dr. Marie said she could stay a few more minutes.
Mhm.
There was a hand up. I think was it Nashawn? I want to make sure you have an opportunity. And I do see a question in the chat. I'm about to respond to you as well. But did you still have a question or a comment?
I did. It's a little bit
Awesome.
more complicated. As I was listening to you, Kelly, what you said about learned helplessness and some of the other women who spoke about their children. My daughter is 31 now. She started smoking marijuana in college, and she does it every day, like what Dr. Marie was saying, and she's on Adderall, and she's on because they diagnosed her as bipolar. She had a psychotic break some years ago,
Mhm,
battled with suicide ideation, all of that. But she smokes marijuana every day,
mhm,
and hard time holding down a job for any long length of time. And she still lives here with us. We did the thing before when she was an adult. Then it was after she had came back from college after she graduated, and was smoking marijuana in the house. I did put her out at that time, and then, things worked out where she came back and said she wouldn't do that anymore in the house because I said, we're not going to have you smoking in the home.
mhm,
Um, but it just seemed like, and she does the injection once a month, as you were talking about, and all of that. But it's like the marijuana use just has not decreased at all.
Mhm.
And it's a everyday thing, several times a day.
Mhm.
Um, and so we just don't know the path forward. She has a therapist. She's had several therapists. And at one point, it's like she was making some progress, and then it just seems like that she's just regressing. And I don't know whether I feel like her being here may be causing her to regress more, because it's not giving her any initiative to really want to do more. Right now she did look into trying to get disability, or even find she's working with an agency about trying to get her residential apartments, so
Mhm.
it's like a outpatient, but they can still live on their own and those kind of things. But I don't know how that's going to turn out. She was denied disability, so it's like it's just a process that we've been dealing with for a very long time now. Like I said, since she graduated from college, she's very talented, gifted in so many ways, especially in the arts. But it's just not knowing what the next step is. I don't know what you could suggest,
Mhm.
um, because she does need to be out on her own.
Yes. So to me, just listening, I don't know all the details or anything like that. Two things that come to mind. The first is a life skills coach, and the second is an adjustment in her medication, whether that be the injection or whether it be something for like anxiety. Because if she's smoking many times during the day, it could be boredom, right? But it could also
Mm-hmm.
be a method of anxiety that's what she's using as a coping method. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
a terrible cycle, right? Because it's also making you not motivated to want to do anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those would be my two things. Believe it or not, and I should have mentioned this earlier, that there are life skills coaches that you can seek out, and they even have
Yeah.
coaches for teenagers as well. And there's
Yeah.
really cool.
She had a life skill coach,
Mhm.
and with her she did make a lot of progress, but then once that was over, she started regressing.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
And
she's
I
had
hate
that.
when they stop the treatment. They're like, "Oh, you've done all the sessions for life skills," or like, "Oh, you've done all the sessions for therapy. Now we're gonna get rid of." Like, it's like, no, I there for this life skills coaching, you may need it for a very long period of time. It's not just, oh, we're just gonna do a certain amount of sessions and that's that. And then when the
Mhm.
patient starts doing better, oh, you're good. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
gonna
Mhm.
because you're doing better. And it's like, no, let's keep the maintenance. So that's where I would go with it. I would do a medication change. Again, I don't know the details, but it sounds like whether that be
Mhm.
adjustment in the injection or an adding something for as needed. So instead of smoking, you take this to help you with anxiety. And life skills coaching. That would be my suggestion. And a change of environment is always good, right? But um, to get them out of where they're getting that supply. But also that's tricky because you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what environment would be okay, where I could be close enough if there's an emergency, but
Mhm.
that she's away from these things that are causing more, not healthy an environment. You know what I mean? For using
Yes.
some
Okay. Thank you.
helps or anything.
Very helpful.
Mhm.
Thank you for commenting, and thank you for the question. And I know we are over time.
Mm-hmm.
Is 9:08 Eastern, but this has been so phenomenal. I would love to have you back again to
Sure.
keep working through this journey. And I would love for you, before we wrap up,
Mm-hmm.
if you could share how people can reach you, Dr. Marie, your best contact information,
Mm-hmm.
or your website, or your email, whatever you'd like, so people can follow up if they have more questions or if there's an opportunity to work with you.
Sure. It's icantelehealth.com, and then my number, it's the 352 575 0832. And if you're just like wanting to just like, hey, I just want to run, some of these thoughts and any questions, like just wanted to get some ideas about this. But yes, thank you, Keisha, for sharing. I just saw that she had mentioned that it's the probation has been a saving grace. And I'm hoping that with your son being on probation, that they were able to get him back on that injection. And that's exactly what happened. So he was on the 6 month Vega injection. Sometimes it requires them having to go back on just the monthly one to kind of get them stable. And then go, do it monthly, and then maybe the 3 months one. And I wouldn't, if it were me, I wouldn't venture back to the 6 month one. I would just do either the month or the 3 month one. But
That's
yeah.
great.
Yeah, see, and then that's the thing. You notice a change in behavior, and then they started smoking again and is back in psychosis. So it's so delicate, right? Because you're like, they're doing so well, they're good. And then they're now having symptoms. So it's again, which came first, the chicken or the egg? It's like, okay, are they smoking again because maybe the medication isn't giving them full coverage in terms of anxiety or paranoia, and they're trying to relax, so they're using again because they realize I don't feel good. And the number one thing that they'll say is anxiety. I feel very anxious, I can't calm down. And how I know that it's an anxiety that would require some type of antipsychotic versus like a Xanax, a Clonopin, or Buspar, or some type of anxiety medication is when you actually give them anxiety medication doesn't work. So I've had patients where they're on like the Ativans, they're on like a Buspar, and they're like, oh, and they're on a high dose of it, and they're like, I still feel anxious. And then you give them like an antipsychotic, like a Risperidone, or you give them Abilify, or you give them Aristada, or you give them Invega, and their anxiety actually decreases. And you know that the stem, or what's causing that anxiety is not the same pathway, like a GABA pathway versus like a dopamine pathway. So there's differences, because anxiety always sounds like this umbrella, like, oh, they're anxious, they're anxious, they're anxious, but there's different things that can be causing someone to be anxious. So
Awesome.
sorry.
I wanted to
Hope that answers
say,
that question.
no, you're phenomenal. You always are helpful. Thank you, Keisha, for putting that in the chat. Thank you for your response. And I want to just make sure that I repeat, if you can repeat your email and your phone number, I'll put it in the chat for people.
My website,
Your website, please.
icantelehealth.com. You
Okay,
can
got it.
email me at icantelehealth@gmail.com.
Thank you.
And the number, it's 352
Yes.
575
Uh-huh.
0832. And
Okay.
so what I've had is, like, even if you're not trying to be a patient or anything, you're just like, hey, this is my situation, and I just wanted to get like a feedback on what you would suggest. I do offer that free of charge.
That's awesome.
Just reach out to me and we'll get connected.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And that's what's so beautiful about this village. We've been, you've been here 2 or 3 times in the past, and always such wisdom, always such wonderful advice, and with such love. And so I just want to say I appreciate you for
No,
being here and for staying on an extra 13 minutes this morning. Thank
no
you.
problem. Well, thank you
Any
for having me.
closing thoughts before we close?
Hang in there.
Dr.
And
Marie?
yes,
Yes,
hang there. It does get better. And what better looks like for everybody is different. So, better for one person could be just, okay, they're talking to me more, they're being more open to me, or have more
yeah,
acceptance of this, of how to treat them, or my child is now willing to take something that they weren't willing to take before, even if I'm
that's
marketing
right.
as, oh, to help you to get a good night's rest,
That's
um,
right.
willing to see a life skills coach. Everything better is different for everyone, but it does get
That's
better.
right. It
And so,
does get better.
yeah, don't give up hope.
Hope, that is the word. And we should have a whole session on that. Dr. Vicky talks about hope all the time. And
Mhm.
so another session about hope, and I'd love to have you back as
Yeah.
well at some point. But thank you for being here.
Mhm.
I don't believe Dr. Vicky is with us today. I think she is out of town, but I will do the closing prayer. I'm sitting in Chicago in Trinity United Church of Christ, and with a dear friend who's doing a book event, Tina Lippert, who's been here. So I feel very much touched this morning. So I'm
Mhm.
going to do my best to close us out in a prayer today. So if we can bow our heads. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day that you have made. Thank you for Dr. Marie Smith East for being with us and pouring into us so beautifully this morning. I ask for your divine protection over my child and all of the children of all of the people on our SonRise Project. Please guard their hearts, their minds, their bodies from harm. Surround them with voices of wisdom, of love, and of truth, and help them see their worth and their value and the greatness within them beyond substances or temporary escapes. Give me strength, dear Lord, patience, and compassion as I parent through this storm. Let my words be guided by love and compassion, not fear, but by hope and not frustration. Help me to be a source of steady encouragement and love, even when the journey feels long and challenging. I pray for healing. I pray for a lesson of pain. And I pray that we can break every chain that holds our children back from the full and abundant life that you have given. Strengthen my faith. Remind me that you are always working, you are in control, and you have wrapped all of our children in your arms and your capable hands. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Beautiful.
Amen. Thank you, Kelli. Thank you, Dr. Kelli.
We are all going to be okay, and our children are already okay. And
Amen.
that is what
Amen.
we hold
Amen.
on to.
Amen.
Yes. So have a beautiful day, everyone. We will be back next week. And thank you again for being here today. I'm so appreciative of you. So we'll be back next Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern. Have a beautiful day, everyone.